"Sorry I'm late," she said, slightly out of breath as she stood beside the table, gently adjusting the small child sleeping against her shoulder. The dimly lit restaurant in downtown Chicago hummed with quiet conversations and clinking glasses, but for a brief moment, it felt like everything paused. Daniel looked up, clearly caught off guard. This wasn't what he had pictured when he agreed to a blind date. His eyes flickered from her apologetic face to the tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. "I hope you don't mind," she added quickly, her voice carrying both embarrassment and exhaustion. "My babysitter canceled at the last minute, and I didn't have anyone else to call." She shifted her weight slightly, as if ready to turn around and leave if he objected. Daniel blinked, processing the situation. He had spent the past week debating whether to even show up, convinced it would be another awkward dinner, filled with forced smiles and shallow conversation. But this was different. Unexpected, real. "No, it's okay," he said, finally standing up and pulling out the chair for her. "Please sit." His tone softened, as he noticed the way she carefully settled into the seat, making sure not to wake the child. Up close, he could see the faint signs of a long day written across her face, the subtle dark circles under her eyes, the way her shoulders carried a quiet weight. Yet there was also something else, a warmth, a quiet strength that made him pause. "I'm Daniel," he said, offering a small, reassuring smile. "Emily," she replied, adjusting the blanket again, as the baby stirred slightly before settling back into sleep. Her movements were instinctive, gentle, protective. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The situation hung in the air, unusual yet strangely comfortable. A waiter approached, glancing curiously at the child before politely asking for their order. Emily hesitated, clearly unsure how this night would unfold. Daniel noticed and leaned forward slightly. "Hey, it's really okay," he said quietly. "We can keep it simple." She looked at him, surprised by his calmness. Most people would have been irritated, maybe even left, but he hadn't. Instead, he was still here, still trying as the initial awkwardness began to fade. Something unexpected settled between them. Not perfection, not the polished start of a typical date, but something far more genuine. And for the first time that evening, Emily allowed herself to breathe. The baby stirred softly, tiny fingers curling against the edge of the blanket before a quiet whimper escaped. Emily's body tensed instantly, her attention shifting completely as she gently rocked the child in her arms. "I'm sorry," she whispered, already preparing to stand, but Daniel raised a hand slightly, signaling her to stay. "It's okay," he said, his voice calm. Almost reassuring, he leaned forward, a little curiosity replacing any earlier uncertainty. The baby's eyes slowly opened wide, glassy and unexpectedly focused on him. For a brief second, they simply stared at each other, as if trying to understand this new presence. Daniel hesitated, then gave a small, awkward wave. "Hey there," he murmured, unsure of what else to do. To his surprise, the baby's lips curved into the faintest smile, followed by a soft, sleepy giggle. Emily blinked, caught off guard, and then laughed quietly herself, a genuine, unguarded sound that seemed to lighten the space between them. "I think he likes you," she said, her voice softer now, the earlier tension melting away. "I'll take that as a good sign," Daniel replied with a slight grin, relaxing back into his chair. Something about the moment felt disarming. There were no expectations here, no rehearsed lines or polished impressions, just a simple, honest interaction. As the evening continued, conversation began to flow more naturally, between pauses to soothe the baby. Emily shared pieces of her life, how things hadn't turned out the way she once planned, how responsibility had come earlier than expected. There was no self-pity in her voice, only quiet honesty. Daniel listened. Really listened, finding himself opening up. In return, he admitted he had nearly canceled the date. "Tired of empty connections and predictable conversations. I guess I didn't expect this," he said, gesturing lightly toward the baby. Then back at her, "Yeah." Emily smiled faintly. "Me neither." Yet neither of them seemed disappointed anymore. The restaurant, once intimidating and formal, now felt distant, almost irrelevant. Their small table had become its own world, one filled with soft laughter, shared truths, and something neither had planned for. When the check finally arrived, Daniel glanced at it briefly before looking up at her, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "Next time," he said gently. "We planned for 3. Emily's eyes widened, slightly surprised, giving way to something warmer, something hopeful for the first time in a long while. The future didn't feel uncertain. It felt possible, and as the baby rested quietly between them, what had begun as an imperfect night quietly turned into the start of something real.